the analogies around, okay, if you love gardening and how it grows and how it feeds you, and this is just a different perspective. This is actually exactly what I'm doing. We're basically investing like you invest the seeds into the soil to grow something. She's got tomatoes, she's got all these amazing things in her garden that feed her and give her joy, which also are beautiful. And that's basically how we started looking at money and how investing money is creating a different version of a garden that will feed her and
Yep.
create a life of beautiful things.
Amie Baker is a financial advisor with a difference. She runs her own business, Rekab, but is also a money mindset coach and helps people understand the relationship with money. We talk about money narratives, how a person's background plays a part in how they feel about money, and how to alter your path if you have self-limiting beliefs. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hi everyone, look, I'm joined by Amie Baker, financial advisor and very importantly, a money mindset coach. How are you, Amie?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
We talked about how busy you've been today. Obviously, there's a lot going on in your world. You run a financial planning practice. You're also, take on and embarking on this journey of money mindset coaching and training advisors. There's a lot going on. How do you do it all?
I guess it really, I'm driven by my passion, to be honest with you, because if you aren't really loving what you do, you won't do it. I don't feel like I'm always working. So the financial planning business was something I started back in 2013, and I've built it and created it. My husband works now in the business with me, and this afternoon I'm interviewing to grow my team. So we've got Davina, who works in the office at the admin side, and we're going to get someone to support her and help us with the next level where we're actually rolling out the process right now, a course, a financial literacy course, which incorporates the whole idea of money mindset coaching. And then I also have this business money mindset coaching, which is for financial advisors, where I work with my business partner, Cara. That's quite a part-time business because we're basically breaking that into timeframes when we've got her and I can get together and teach a group. So we spoke with a dealer group recently. So we're looking to roll out a pilot with the dealer group and their advisors as big group. And also incorporate that for accountants. So that's really exciting.
That's really about educating financial advisors on how to incorporate, I suppose, financial psychology or money mindset into their approaches, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. It's a very hands-on practical approach that advisors can incorporate into their practice, from onboarding a client and actually having those conversations around mindset and their relationship to money, so that the advisor can actually really help the client achieve their goals. Because my experience, and we spoke about this some time ago, was as an advisor, is client would come, want a plan. There was often a trigger event that motivated that client to reach out to an advisor, or to me, to you, to other advisors. And that trigger could be an emotional, usually it's triggered by fear, worry about the future and their time frame to retirement. Or it could be that they've inherited money, or something in their life has happened where they've really started to think about where they're at, and the fact that they haven't got any sort of plan or financial direction, or haven't got anything to show for what they've been working for. And if we think about it, that's all fueled by some level of emotion. So the financial plan is great, but it's not addressing the elephant in the room. And we go through that process as advisors to go through the financial fact find and create this strategy, which is great. And that's part of the joy. I like doing that. But when we get to that review time and say the client was supposed to be putting extra into their super or extra into their mortgage or whatever the strategy may have been, they may not have actually implemented their end. They're not engaged in the whole process. And it seems like there's this disconnect. And that used to frustrate me. And I became obsessed with behaviours and why people did what they do. You say you're going to go and do something, and then all of a sudden you kind of don't. You want to, but you don't. Why does that happen? It's not just about money. It's not just about finances. It's the same when someone embarks on getting a gym membership and they go for a week and then next thing it's 6 months and they haven't been. What's going on there? There's always this sort of questioning about their behaviors and patterns, and really it comes down to beliefs and subconscious and whatnot. So once I kind of found all of those answers with a lot of research, it became really clear that money mindset coaching is something I needed to bring into my practice, and it sort of evolved from there.
Is it really about the fact that you've got clients and you're trying to improve their lives and their outcomes, and you
Yes.
could give them the best financial strategy possible,
Yes.
but at the end of the day, if they're not in the background behaviorally implementing and doing things, then it doesn't matter what you give them, it's not going to actually happen. So is really that the reason that you moved from the pure financial advice piece into integrating this money mindset stuff?
100%. Absolutely. That is the
Okay.
motivating factor. It was, I wanted to ensure my clients were engaged in their financial future, that there's an education piece that also we can bring into this as well. And I have, in terms of, we communicate through emails and regular webinars and things like that, but it's the engagement is really about them, what's important to them, and tapping into what motivated them in the first place to come to you. And initially, like looking at the financial planning process, and financial, like, fact find, the financial data isn't getting to the root of what has motivated them. It's just the numbers. And really, it comes down to, if we get them into a position where they're looking at their relationship with money, what's really important, where their values lie, their goals, and how they want to actually move through life, feeling more confident and empowered by their decision making, versus just sort of in a situation where it's all constant knee-jerk reaction. And that's what I guess the coaching process does, is it brings that awareness piece to the whole planning piece.
So to distill the money mindset idea or the financial psychology idea, I think when you think about behavioral finance is really more of a cognitive psychology sort of scenario where it's actually looking at generally saving patterns, spending patterns, investment patterns, more broadly. Whereas what money mindset is about is really more clinical, almost like a clinical psychology, where you're actually looking at the individual's background, past experiences, challenges, and all of that, and seeing what sort of stories they are telling themselves that could be not advantageous. Is that a summary for what a money mindset coach kind of deals with?
Yes, absolutely. Um, you're right. In terms of the behavioral economics, or the behavioral sort of financial psychology, it looks at it on a greater approach. And we see that when we're looking at the financial markets, right? We can see the financial markets actually are movements created by people in fear and whatnot. So
Yeah.
whereas when we're dealing with the money coaching and money mindset coaching, it's focused on the individual and their needs. And we all have some level of beliefs around money. We've got our own sort of thought processes, and we've got our own sort of self-talk, and we've all got our own childhood stories that have actually created and imprinted in our minds to how we actually see the world we are in now as adults, and how we relate to money as adults. So it's about unpacking that stuff and really getting to the crux of really where we've come from and what got us to where we're at now, and how we can now go forward with that information.
Would you share with us potentially your own journey? Do you have a money story? Have you
Of
overcome
course,
any hurdles or challenges associated with that? Have you had a poor relationship with money in the past?
absolutely, absolutely. Yes, we all have a money story, and I mean, I'm very open talking about mine, because especially with the teaching I do with advisors, we all actually have the opportunity to share our own money stories, because I make sure that, well, Cara and I want to ensure that they have that hands-on experience of what it is like to even be coached through this process. So I've openly shared mine many times. Mine was, and has been for a very long time until I started doing this work, I was sort of in that feast and famine holding pattern, because when I was growing up, my dad had a business that went international. It was doing really well. And we had a nice house, and I remember my dad buying my mum a brand new car. I was really young. It was before I started school, so I was, preschool, maybe 3 or 4 years old, remembering that mum got a new car, and I called it a Lamborghini. It was definitely not. It was like a Honda. It wasn't a Lamborghini. But because I was so little, I just was like so excited. I remember
Yeah,
we
of
went
course.
overseas, and then my parents split. And well, Dad sort of had floated the business during the '86 crash, which was a terrible time, and it was through a holding company. So they basically let go of certain companies that they'd bought on. So that was very devastating to the entire family business. And during this time, my parents split. So I went from this lifestyle to then having a single mum with 3 children. Mum was single with 3 kids, and dad no longer this high flying CEO. And so this pattern started creeping up as I got older. Money would come in, and then all of a sudden situations would occur and money would go out, and like there'd be big bills, or in my case, I've also gone through divorce and had to rebuild, and those kind of things. So there's been these experiences where I've gone and looked at it and gone, oh my God, that's this feast and famine cycle. And where did that come from? And it came from just me experiencing those two worlds, and I'm sort of bringing those two worlds into my world as an adult. It sounds very woo woo, by the way, and it can seem that way, but it's what we're bringing, what we're attracting, and the experiences that we kind of are faced with, and it's then about going and reframing my belief about money, that it doesn't have to just be all or nothing. And that was
So
obviously,
is the narrative the thing that you'd be telling yourself is, look, I've created this wealth. Well, it comes and it goes, and it's probably going to go at some stage.
and then
Is
it
that,
does.
and then it does, right?
Yep.
Because of perhaps those beliefs feeding into poor decision making, or a cavalierness with the way that you potentially are making decisions with your money. Is that what it is?
Often then, like, this is where I say it's a bit weird, because often it's not actually about my, like, not just decision making with money. It's circumstances in which my life is faced with that. Then all of a sudden there's this huge expense. Like, for example, you come across somebody who, I've seen this with my clients who had the same pattern where it's all or nothing when it comes to their finances, and they would have a huge amount of savings, and next thing their car blows up. It's not about bad decision making. It's about sort of like, you know, our beliefs basically create our reality in terms of what we see and how we perceive our lives. So if we've got this belief system in our minds that money is either it's all or nothing, I either got it or I don't, then that seems to be the pattern that occurs with people when they've got that belief. Other people have a belief that, and I mean, I've really worked through this, and it's definitely changed. And I don't
Yeah, of
believe that
course.
anymore, obviously. And being a financial advisor, I sort of practice what I preach, and I brought that into my life some time ago. But I recognized this when I started doing this work from when I was younger as well. And it was really clear to me. Like, I had that experience, save and save and save and get into my vesting strategy. And this was when I was a single mum, then the car blew up. And that actually happened to me. And it was like, why does this always happen? Because subconsciously, that's become my belief that once I have money, I've got to have no money. And it was like, also because I'm a single mother, there has to be some level of struggle, because that was something I experienced with my mother. So when I was a single parent, I had that sort of always this fear that we didn't have enough, and
Right.
then if that makes sense.
There's almost like a shame in actually having enough money and not having to, have it difficult, because difficulty is associated with what is the background that you've
Mm,
experienced.
absolutely. Like, you can be a single parent and actually do really well financially and in your career. You
Mm,
can actually do that. But there was this sort of belief that being a single mum, I had to struggle. It's because I
mm,
thought that's
mm,
because I saw that in my mum. And we can see this in when, I'm coaching other people. It can be that, you have to work really hard for your money, or money doesn't grow on trees. So with people that are, say, ready to retire, and I see this a lot as an advisor, They could have an incredible portfolio in their super that we could turn into account-based pension, and they could have a really nice, comfortable life. But in their mind, because of this belief that you have to work hard to actually enjoy your money, they don't believe that they can really actually retire because they're not earning, they're not working. So that's again another mindset that has to be,
Yeah.
that we can work on as advisors to help our clients transition to retirement.
I've got a great example of it. This is not just one client. There's numerous ones that have done this where we've actually presented a financial plan as for a new client, and then they've gone through the process and they've actually thanked us and shown a lot of gratitude for the fact that they feel like they can go on holidays. And when you look at the amount of wealth that we're talking about, they could have gone on holidays right through. And I just go, so I'm thinking to myself, well, so you're telling me you haven't gone on holidays because you felt that you didn't have enough to go on holidays, yet objectively you had more than enough to go on several holidays every year. And I thought, what is the belief behind that? Why has this transpired for so long, and why has it been our kind of financial plan that has kind of unlocked the key or unlocked the door? Yeah,
Because and
that's
the answer in that is because you've given some logic to the situation, because what's going
yeah,
on in our subconscious is illogical.
yeah,
It's illogical to say money doesn't grow on trees. We all know money doesn't grow on trees. But what is
yeah,
that doing in our beliefs, and how do we now perceive money with that in the back of our minds? It doesn't make sense. But when you're actually now demonstrating a plan and showing them that these things that they desire to do, like travel, is all available to them because it's on paper, there's logic now. And that with beliefs, what we've got to do, and this is where it's the simple piece of this process of money mindset coaching, is when we recognize a belief, we've got to actually demonstrate that that's not true, and here's evidence why. So as advisors, we're giving them the evidence to why that's not true. When we're trying to move our clients from working full time to retiring, or that's business succession plan, it's now the plan itself becomes the evidence, and using other people's examples becomes the evidence. And then there's new logic versus this fear that is, again, illogical, that isn't serving them, and pointing it out. It's okay to actually say, you really believe that you have to work really hard. You don't. Your money's worked hard for you. Enjoy it. And give those examples of how it's worked for you. And then all of a sudden it diminishes that thought process.
So the advisor process and the actual documentation of the evidence and the articulation of the evidence is a really helpful thing. But obviously, clearly, because you've gone into money mindset coaching, it's not enough, because sometimes even with the logic, there is still a reservation or an unwillingness to get out of that. The narrative is so strong that the logic is not actually cutting through. Is that correct?
100%, absolutely correct. Like, let's think about this. Our subconscious is developed from our childhood. So we, between the ages of, like, from birth basically to about 7, we're in a very suggestive wavelength of our brain. So that's sort of the same wavelength speed is the same as what you have as an adult when you're hypnotized or meditating. So children are basically in a place where they're absorbing everything, and that's where the creation of our values, our core values, and the environment, the energy which we're in. It doesn't need to be what our parents say. It could be just behaviours around each other that children take in, and they then create this world, this belief. And those beliefs then get carried on as we grow up into adults. And effectively, we've carried those beliefs to be making these decisions, and they're adult decisions, but they're really being developed very early in our lives. And some of those are very illogical. So the idea now is, when we're working with clients, is to have a conversation around what their childhood was with when it came to money, to really identify anything that could be holding them back. Because once you have an idea of that, it can really help you, really unlock this stuff for them.
Do you have like categories of narratives? Like, do you have like, this is this type of person, or this is this type of person? Are there kind of broad categories that people tend to fit under with with money narratives?
I try not to label or categorize. When I first
Yeah.
learnt this process, we used I was taught a system where we could put archetypes to certain people. But what I find in the way the human brain works is that you can trick yourself once you've got a label, then you can justify that behavior. So I try not to sort of we don't go down that road of labeling or putting people into category because, then it doesn't empower them to move forward and change. So
Okay.
it's
Okay.
simply the fact is that we're all in the same boat in some respects. We all have various beliefs, and when you really break them down, often it's simple. Like it's a simple thing as either we're in scarcity space, we're feeling like money's going to run out all the time. We're living in fear. There's most of it is driven by fear. Um, there is also that, when I told you, scarcity for me was 1 minute we were living in, abundance, and then it was scarcity. So it was sort of famine and feast. Then there's also that, yeah, the whole story about the hard work. You've got to work hard to make it. You've got to hustle to actually be successful. They're the main kind of
Yeah.
stories that you hear. Because if we think about it, a lot of this messaging's come not just from our parents, their parents, and our great
Yes.
grandparents, but we've got to look at
Yes.
how the timeline of history's worked. We've gone through, World War One, World War Two, the Great Depression, and that's all come through in stories to us as we've grown up. And not on top of that, so we've got that through history that's now become part of our culture, and then we've got media. So there's all of these external factors that when we think about when someone's born, look at their age, look at when the timelines, like I was born in the late 70s. And like when you think about the economy between my time when I was born in 77 to, when I started school in 1983, like what was the economy like? It was pretty full on. It was a very unusual time. High interest rates, and it was actually almost similar to where we're at now, right now, with the
Yeah.
markets and 19, and then it just went further down that crazy town into 86 as well. So all of those kind of things in like that financial history plays out, even if we don't even when no 5-year-old's going to be thinking about the economy, but they're hearing
Mm.
about it. They're hearing about the stress, the cost of living, inflation. They're hearing about interest rate rises, all of those kind of things going on in the background that create some level of fear or uncertainty that is a driving factor to how they manage money in their future.
What's a healthy belief system then when it comes to money? Is there just a one fit all in terms of a healthy belief system, or does everyone have a different variant on that? There are many different healthy ways of looking at money, about money.
We're all complex creatures, and we're all individuals, because I could say that, um, I could tell somebody that money is abundant, ever flowing, and it's just going to keep coming, but they may have an addiction. They might have a sort of a gambling problem, right? So that's not going to be helpful for them, because I'll just spend everything I've got because more money is going to come, right?
Yeah.
So there,
Yeah.
there, you do have to be discerning in respect to how you help somebody with their relationship with money. But definitely, I mean, I'm a big believer in, looking for the evidence to remove sorts of beliefs that aren't serving you. So, for
Yeah.
example,
That makes sense.
where, the great example there would be someone who wants to retire and they feel like they have to work all the time, even though their portfolio could fund their lifestyle. It's then showing them the evidence, but also showing them that, giving them other examples of other people, how it could work for them. And maybe getting them to entertain the idea of just working part-time and do a transition to retirement to get them into that space. Or what other activities are they that give them joy, that they can actually do as a way of moving them from the workspace and actually enjoying doing something different. So again, it's all coming down to what their needs are, but giving them evidence to squish those beliefs that have been holding them back from what they really want to do.
It strikes me as well that it would be, it's one of those things where you don't know what you don't know, and it requires an awareness to begin with that you've got some beliefs that aren't helping you. So in the absence of someone like you, how does someone recognize they're in a need of a new relationship with money? Like how do they determine, I actually need to rethink and rejig the way I think about money? I suppose you
I
need the
think
awareness to begin with.
absolutely the first part of yeah, you do need awareness, but maybe having a look if you're frustrated all the time with your current financial situation. It's that whole thing of doing the same thing over and over is basically insanity.
Yeah.
And going, okay, well, why haven't I changed? And really being honest with yourself and going, okay, if I don't do something, if I don't change, where will I be in 12 months' time? And this is something, these are the questions I do ask my clients as well. If you were not to do what you set out to do, where will you be in 12 months? And what does that look like for you then? And where will you be because you did nothing in another 5 years? So it's now putting that accountability on yourself and being honest. The fact is, our brains, like, subconscious is designed to steer away from fear. And sometimes something new is scary. So when we're going to try something new, we often just want to avoid and walk away, especially if it's something we don't understand or we think is going to be complicated, we'll avoid it. That's just a natural thing to do. It's a survival mechanism. So it's about actually stepping up and going, I'm going to face this fear a bit, get a bit uncomfortable so I can
Yeah.
change and move forward. And that might be just simply practicing money mindfulness and looking at your bank account more regularly and just
Yeah.
starting to
Yeah.
see the numbers and then going, okay, let's maybe make a little bit of a change. And I'm a big believer in the small changes first, the habit stacking, just
Yeah.
creating little changes to then make the bigger changes. Because once you start those little changes, like for example, just a smaller, more regular payments towards a debt, or a smaller amount moving from your everyday account to a savings account, and then cheering yourself on. You've done it consistently for a month. Okay, if I increase that now in the next month, what does that look like? And in doing that, that habit stacking is also reprogramming your thoughts around your money as well. So it's actually another way of reframing a belief, because you've now demonstrating to yourself you can change and you can do something new.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Coming to the clients that you've worked with practically, have you seen some clients where their belief system has had a tangible effect on their personal financial position? And has there been any redemption stories around that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I actually did a podcast the other day on one of my money mindset coaching clients, where when she met me, she had debt, but she was also terrified of talking about money with her partner. She also, money was very a negative thing. She felt that money caused problems for people. That was
Yeah.
because of her experience of her parents fighting over money. It was
Yeah.
also then another pattern that came into her life was in her first relationship when she was overseas, in a relationship where her partner then was gambling and doing things behind her back, right? So then all of a sudden money became part of a conflict again, just like in a different way. But if we consider patterns, it was almost similar to, her growing up and seeing money being part of a conflict. So she had this and carried this burden of money being yuck, gross, awful in her mind, which meant that when it came to her personal finances, she just avoided. When we started working together, we recognized those two relationships, the correlation between her first relationship and her parents, and also worked on that it wasn't any, that it's not her fault, because she had a lot of shame around the behavior that her partner did and where she was at. We then did a whole gratitude piece around how money can actually be a great tool to create the life you want, and looking at how far she's come. She was actually quite a warrior when it came to her finances, but she didn't see it that way. Like at a very young age, she'd bought a car with her dad before she even had a license, right? Because it was a vintage car, those kind of things. But she didn't even acknowledge the things that she'd done and achieved with her ability to earn money, manage money, and save money. So it was about looking at where she was at on her mountain, so to speak, looking back at the positives, and then looking at the debt that she had and what it had created for her, and being really grateful for that opportunity to being able to borrow that money. And now every time she paid that money back, it was being grateful for the experience. And that's actually an exercise I give all clients that have debt and are going down that debt reduction journey. It's sort of like, it's every time you're paying towards your debt, it's like opening a photo album and seeing the joy of that experience that you got to have because that money was loaned to you. So within a very short period of time of us working together, she was open to talk to her partner about finances. They began to plan. They got engaged. She cleared debt, bought a house, and now planning a wedding. So that's pretty damn good.
Amazing.
It was
Absolutely
amazing.
amazing.
I mean, that was a fast track. I was blown away how quick that case was because she just really embodied everything we worked through. And she was really open. I mean, she spoke about this on that podcast, how scared she was to talk to her partner about her money.
This is great because it actually is it's a great segue into my next question, because you talk about her being open and really embodying everything that you're saying and actually moving with it. Do you find this conversation to be difficult with some people where they don't want to delve into their backstory? They're guarded. They feel like you've talked about woo-woo quite a few times. Some people don't want to necessarily go and see a psychologist at all for their own mental issues and challenges. Do you find there's a guardedness about talking about backstories and stuff like that? And you are a financial advisor as well as a starting point. Do people object to going down this route with you?
In a short answer, yes, that does happen. And it comes down to looking at their goals and their objectives to why they're here in front of me. And it's about now going, okay, I respect that this whole idea of me talking about your financial history and your relationship with money might be very uncomfortable, but it gives me some insight to how we can move forward. And some people you get people in your office that are savvy and just now need some more direction to achieve their goals in a certain time frame. And you can actually recognize that they're not needing this kind of work. But there are clients that are sitting in your office and you're looking at the numbers and there's a lot that doesn't stack up. And when you start, and we advisors, we know this, you can start looking at these numbers and going, okay, we've worked for many years, and over that time we can accumulate wealth, and some people just don't, and some people really struggle, and some people have nothing to show after almost a lifetime of working. And there are red flags we can see as advisors, and it's a matter of just saying, well, I can help you achieve some of these financial goals, but I need you to actually be open and honest with me to help you. And you need to be open and honest with yourself. And it's that question I just said before: where will you be in 12 months if nothing changes, if you don't change some of these patterns and behaviors around the way you manage your money? I can't do it for you. I can tell you how to do it, but it's taking the horse to water and making that horse drink. It's not going to happen without them wanting to make that change. And it's just that whole conversation. And you're going to get people, especially if they're coming to you for financial advice, yes, you've got to be discerning in that situation and go, are they wanting this? They just might want to be shown, this is a strategy, this is what you should be doing, and you're on your way. And that's okay, but it's up to them if they come back in 12 months' time or 6 months' time, or they're not engaged. And this is something that I'm implementing in my business, is saying, hey, we've done this, and this is what, where you're at, and this is where we expect you to be. So this is a time to have this conversation about whether we need to do some coaching with you.
Mm-hmm. So we have, different listeners from all different walks of life, but one of the major demographics of business owners, and one of the things that business owners often do happens to business owners, they have to actually think about their life post business. Often a succession is really challenging. business owner knows they need to retire, that they probably want to retire at one level, but sometimes they just don't. Is there a reason for this reticence to actually, maybe change over to to the kids, or sell the business to some other third party? Is there a reason why sometimes this doesn't happen from a kind of financial psychology point of view?
Yes, yes, because it's a part of their identity in one respect. You build a business, and I know this, and you probably know this, you put your heart and soul when you start a business. There's a lot of sacrifices that you make with, financially, but emotionally, and your family, your loved ones are also part of that sacrifice in some cases. And then it comes to a time where you've been attached to this business, this life, this world, especially if you've got clients. I've got a client who has just handed over his law practice, and he's still in the business. And I'm looking at him and I just think, you're never going to actually let go 100%, because that's him, that's his identity, that's who he's been for so many years, for the last 45 years. That's become his identity. So again, this is now moving away from a belief, or there's still beliefs there, and that they lose who they are, that there's also the worthiness factor, there's an identity factor. There are a lot of other layers in respect to stepping back from something you've built. And we as parents go through very similar stages. Our children become adults and leave the nest, but it's their decision and we have little control over it. Whereas this is the one thing in our lives that we've had complete control over. And it's a very terrifying and scary experience.
Is it possible that also that those, I think, are incredibly valid arguments, but the idea around scarcity, the idea that, oh, I don't have enough to retire, even though in some instances, again, you look at it objectively and from an evidence point of view, that there is more than enough.
Yeah, and
That's possible, is it not?
absolutely. But I think that you've got to identify those other layers. So there is definitely, the logic's there. There's the numbers, you're going to have enough. But it's now about this is where that conversation around what other things that you could be doing in the community, in society, that you can give back and give to outside of business, and what other things you could build. Because entrepreneurs are all about creating, building. We build business because that's our whatever business it may be, whether it's a law business, a legal business, or a financial planning business, or it doesn't matter exactly what it is. It's actually the fact that we created and built it, and it's gotten to something, and that's how we've identified ourselves, and that's a lot of our self-worth has come out of building and creating. So we've got to be really, there's a consideration there when somebody's going through that succession planning process, and stepping back and letting go is going to be very hard, because and ways of working through this. The coaching piece is now looking for that, shifting that identity, looking at where your worth is, looking at the work and the worth that you have with your family, your loved ones, or other areas in community outside just the evidence of the numbers, because there's a few other emotional layers in there to attach to the business.
Moving to the themes of the actual, specifically about the podcast, one of the reasons that I created this is because I just had this insight after spending so much time with, clients, that, a person's happiness doesn't move in lockstep with the amount of accumulated capital they have. And there's research out there that says, over a dollar amount of income over 75,000 USD, I think, happiness doesn't improve over that sort of level. And so that's what the podcast is kind of about. Do you agree with that sort of idea?
I absolutely do. My belief with money, and why I feel the money coaching component is so powerful, is that it's actually about taking your power back to yourself and removing the power that money holds over people. Because money, when we give it a lot of power, can make us feel really anxious, which is why people fight over money, why people get greedy. We're giving our power to money versus the other way. Money is the tool. Money is a great tool that can make our lives amazing. It can create our lives to be, it gives us freedom. But we should not be giving it the power. We are the ones that create the freedom with it, using the tool correctly.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, for me, I feel like I've taken an extreme version of that at times. I think I'm trying to even it out at the moment, but the idea of it's never about money, this idea that money is a kind of evil, corruptible force, is something that I have to work on, because I think at times just seeing what sometimes money can do, in my business and in the interactions that I have with many different people, it is kind of led me down the path to think, oh, geez, poison chalice, accumulate, accumulate, accumulate at your peril. So I think it can be extreme in the other way, can't it?
Absolutely. Now, there is a perfect belief that I
Yeah.
can squish right now for you in terms of looking
Perfect.
for
Let's do it.
evidence. Okay, let's do this. So if this is a great one. Money is the root of all evil. Let's look at those. Some of these amazing people. Is Oprah Winfrey evil?
I
With
don't
her,
know, but no.
no. Let's look at what she's done with her billions of dollars, and in creating schools in Africa and helping educate women, disadvantaged women around the world, and lots of different charities. So I'm just using her as an example.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I understand. So you're saying you could actually objectively look at someone rationally and say, look
Look
at
at
their
all their
life, they've
wealth.
accumulated, like look at what they're doing.
Look at what they're doing and how much, like what money can do to help
Mm,
communities. Look at some of the most amazing philanthropists to actually do some incredible work, cancer research, creating communities with fresh water in disadvantaged parts of the world.
mm,
Without money, those
mhm,
situations couldn't occur. So what we've got to look at is the balance. Yes, people get greedy and people do really bad things with money, but let's
mm,
look at the flip side and see all of the good things that money can
mm,
do, and how money can
mm,
actually enhance and create not only an incredible community and do some amazing things on a grand scale if we had billions to work with, but let's bring it
mm,
back into your personal life, in your world,
mm,
and how money actually can be a great tool to educate and home your
mm.
family, to have fresh water running, your gas and electricity going, and all of those amazing things that just ensure your life be comfortable. That's not evil.
No, absolutely not.
That's actually good. Yeah, and that's basically what we do, is when we start identifying these subconscious beliefs that are really hindering our potential to grow our wealth, because we've got this something annoying in us, we don't even know, it's not even there. This is the whole point of money coaching, is a conscious awareness. So as soon as we become aware of, oh my gosh, I keep thinking money, I've got this thought that money is the root of all evil, no wonder I'm struggling to accumulate and grow my wealth. I just propel it, I spend it, I push it away because I think it's evil. And if I'm enjoying it, I might be judged, I might go to hell, whatever and then you've got to look at that objectively, logically, and start seeing the actual reality of it. You're giving money power in a negative space when it's actually
Mm.
could be completely shifted.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time in starting this podcast, there was the thought about money and more on a sort of how it can have a corruptible influence. But in actually having my guests on and speaking to some amazing people, it's really shifted my mindset around how it can be used for for positive
Mm.
and significant positive, both from a community point of view, but at the coalface within a family as well. And that's really what I wanted to uncover when creating this podcast. And this is really why I wanted to have you on, because I think it talks to the theme of the podcast specifically. So I appreciate that. Do you, in terms of the advisors that you work with now, how do you think they can better assist clients in their money beliefs outside of just providing them the financial planning projections and the evidence that we talked about previously?
I think when you have more of an emotional connection with your clients, it changes the whole process of your advice as well. Because if your client's going to be open, like, when I'm working with advisors, they go through this themselves, so they, even regardless of whether they start really fully implementing the whole mindset coaching into their practice, from the feedback that I've had, is that they're looking at their clients in a very different light and a different perspective. When you change that perspective with your client, you change the relationship. And all of a sudden, it becomes a deeper relationship. The deeper relationship then evolves into more engaged client. It's just, once as you said before, you don't know what you don't know. And once you know, you can't unknow it. And so once you are knowing this information and knowing that just you're now armed with better questioning skills, you're armed with a different perspective on human behavior overall, you can start seeing things, start seeing patterns, picking up language, picking up body language, and start actually steering conversations in a way that they can open up and you have conversations differently. I had a client who is a financial planning client. I really have tried to work with her in the money coaching space. She's quite a challenge, quite a character. And she was, oh, look, I think money is just administration and I like to garden. That's all I want to do. I spend my money on my garden. And so I've just weaved in some analogies around gardening and investing and simple little things, and bringing in the whole idea of administration and the fact that she is actually gardening and when it comes to her money and just shifting perspective. And it has changed things to how it took her a while to come on board, and she had inherited money, but she was terrified of investing. And I started seeing that balance go down and down and down as she's spending, and I was looking at this time frame, very concerned that she was going to keep with the same pattern, and eventually it was like she finally got it, but it was all about conversations, bringing back to what's really important to her, and just the analogies around, okay, if you love gardening and how it grows and how it feeds you. And this is just a different perspective. This is actually exactly what I'm doing. We're basically investing like you invest the seeds into the soil to grow something. She's got tomatoes, she's got all these amazing things in her garden that feed her and give her joy, which also are beautiful. And that's basically how we started looking at money and how investing money is creating a different version of a garden that will feed her and
Yep.
create a life of beautiful things.
Do you think at some point, like when an advisor is going through the process, um, that it's no longer the role of the advisor to help in the particular space, and they have to put their hand up and say, perhaps this client actually needs more assistance? It's more of a psychological aspect. Like at what point, like we do a lot as financial advisors, we do a lot, right? At what
Absolutely.
point do we have to take a back seat and say, hey, this is beyond our pay grade?
But definitely when we see like a level of internal financial abuse, like addiction or gambling or shopaholic behavior, where you can see you can't sort of resolve all of this. You could start, suggesting money mindfulness, create a nice cash flow model, but there's going to be in certain types of situations, you will recognize that there is going to be you need additional help. But I always suggest this in the beginning. It's like there might be a time where I feel that you might need to see somebody else about this. It might be that they really open up about some traumatic situation that occurred to them, because when you are going through that money coaching process, you go through their story, go through the childhood, and there might be some stuff that is incredibly triggering or traumatic that's occurred to them. And in that
Yeah.
point, you can still work with them, coaching them through this process of improving their relationship with money, but there might be trauma there that you see will need further healing. And at that point, you can gently say, you might need, have you spoken to somebody about that? Have you actually gone and seen a therapist, or gone, have you sought help in that area? Because that's certainly going to hinder you from moving forward. If you can't move forward as an individual with holding on to that trauma, you won't be able to move forward with your finances or any other area of your life.
You know, I don't want to open a Pandora's box so late
It
in the
can open
podcast, but
Pandora's box.
but I was thinking, as well. You know, one of our roles is to mediate between, you know, client and partner. You know, and often it's the case that, you know, couples find it really difficult to communicate about money, and there's a lot of sensitivity around that. Do you find that? Is it a challenge for you? Do you find that the money mindset idea actually assists in being able to help with couples?
Absolutely, because we all have our own stories, and then we bring in our relationship with that. And that's a bit of baggage that we're carrying, and they're bringing in their baggage. And we've got our own, you know, one of us has our own value set of values, and the other is different sets of values. So actually laying it on the table and seeing each other's, you know, scars, so to speak, we can then see, that's why you do what you, that's why you do that. That's why you believe that. Now I understand. It sort of can really open and shift perspective. It opens your mind to why people behave, you know, your partners behaved certain ways and things that you would never have known about them. And it also gives you that, I guess, grace for them in that place of um, compassion and understanding that we all come here with wounds and it's okay. There's no wrong answer. No one taught us from an early age how to manage our money and how to behave with our money and what the right beliefs are. We've all adopted stuff along the way, and it's great to just be able to open it up like a bit of a, you know, yes, this is my Pandora's box and that's yours, and this is why I behave this way, and it actually helps each other understand. So now we can come together with a greater perspective of what's, you know, created those decisions that you made around your finances and what's created these decisions here, to now work together on a new foundation, a new platform to grow forward, you know. And in that in cases I've had with clients, I've had one-on-ones and then we come together. So sometimes because it's, and then I also ask permission about, is it okay that we talk about this, you know, so that everybody's comfortable and open about everything as well. So you've got to have that open mind.
It seems incredibly valuable to me, incredibly valuable, that you've got an individual who maybe doesn't even know their own belief system and money story, and another individual in the same. They actually end up knowing what their belief systems are. Then they come together and they share what their belief systems are. And then they're actually like, aha, now I get why we're always fighting, because you think this and I think this.
Correct.
I mean, that's an incredible. I think that would be incredibly powerful for any couple, regardless of whether there's
Absolutely.
conflict or not.
Absolutely. I'm working with a couple at the moment. They're very driven, they're very goal orientated. They both run their own businesses, but their spending patterns were very, very different. And being a couple with a child, and you know, we were doing the financial planning and looking at, you know, selling one property to upgrade to the next, and all the factors in between. And as we started looking through the cash flow and the spending and the this and the that, it starts telling there was already conflict. Like he had the business and was doing a whole bunch of things over here, and she was taking the spending in a totally different direction. There was this there wasn't this alignment of where they really were heading. Although they loved talking about their goals, it wasn't happening when it came to the numbers. So I sort of raised it and said, guys, do you think you'd benefit actually doing some money coaching so you guys would really be able to achieve the goals? And again, speaking their language, I knew they were goal setters. I knew that they were driven with their careers. So it was bringing it back to their end game. So there's ways around sort of, you know, I'm not sitting there and going, well, let's talk about your money story and your beliefs. It was, how about we just pull things back a bit and just look at the way you guys think about money, because that will now help shift the way you make decisions and help you make decisions together and more in alignment with where you're going. And they're like, oh, speak to me. What's that about? And it was a very different way, you know, for them to look at money. And I did the same where it was individual and then come together, and also, you know, one party wanted to do more work on this stuff than the other, and because they were really struggling with just their, their history, their past, because they really want to go further in their career and really want to reframe their mindset. And that's also what's really cool about this work, is you can really take on that coaching role to somebody who really has these big goals and get them to sort of take bigger steps, step into, more courageous decision making and whatnot when it comes to their businesses.
I think financial between couples can be one of the most difficult things, and often is. I think it's a major carrot to dangle in front of a client to say, hey, look, if we actually go down this route, even though you might be a little bit cautious, it actually could really improve things for you in terms of the communication about money. And I think that's a really good way to kind of, as advisors, to potentially, talk to clients about, about this financial psychology bit, because if it improves the conversations about money, it improves the relationship. And if that improves, then well-being improves. So I think that's great.
Absolutely. Look, I have to say, there are going to be people that just go, oh, this is very confronting. It's too much. I just can't deal.
Yeah,
I'm going
fair
to
enough.
be,
Fair enough.
and I'm going to be open. When I started this work,
Yep.
we had to take on a few practice clients. So of course I go and choose my husband. And yeah,
Of course you
I'll
did.
just work with
Yeah.
him. We're
Yeah,
both
yeah,
in
sure.
finance. I'm sure this won't be a problem.
Yeah.
And we didn't do it at home. We went out, sat down in a rest. We were going for lunch, so we thought we'll just sit down, have a glass of wine, go through the money story. And he just went, "Oh, I actually can't do this. It's just too much. Oh my God, I didn't realize it would be so
Mm,
confronting." And it's,
mm.
I go, "It's okay. You don't have to do this part. We can move on to the next." He found it really hard, but over time, I'm being me. I sort of just dig out little
You forced him.
pieces. Well, we're both in finance, so there was no problem about talking about money and how we deal with
Yeah,
money and
sure,
investing
sure.
and all of that, and he's in the business now as well. He's certainly come around because he hears me talking day in, day out. He hears me, he doesn't hear the client because of
Yeah,
headphones
of course.
and
Yep,
mic,
yep.
but he hears my conversations and my questioning and everything. It definitely provokes thought, and we definitely have
It's
some
great.
really good conversations. But
Hmm.
initially, he was like, "Hell no, I'm not sure. I just can't deal with this. This is too confronting. I don't want to go back to my childhood right now."
Yeah,
And some
yeah.
people don't, and so you've got to pivot and work around other ways, or sometimes, just as I said, like I demonstrated earlier with that client who was loving her gardening. I
Mm.
used a lot of my coaching techniques and my language to really get to the core, to the issue, and get her to actually see things differently. It wasn't full coaching, but it's definitely the coaching aspect of, and the way we relate to people and the questioning and understanding what's so important, their values, helps get clients to be engaged. So you don't have to go down that whole road of the money story, but it's knowing, um, understanding clients to the point that they are really open to talk about their passions, their values, their goals, and all of that kind of thing. And I think that's sometimes missed a bit with, the whole financial planning process. It can be very clinical. So
Mm.
even if you don't bring the whole money coaching piece, you've got those skills.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I really appreciate you coming on today, because I think it's a great alignment with the theme of the podcast. It's never about money. I've learnt quite a bit, even about my own story. I've been thinking about it a lot since we've talked in pre-interview as well, about all of this sort of thing. And I'm actually very much committed to this idea as a financial advisor, to going down the route, and hoping to, make contact with you. But I feel like it'd be remiss of me to not allow you the opportunity to tell everybody how they can connect with you, if they feel the need.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm on LinkedIn. So Amie Baker is mine, AMIE Baker. I can share
Mhm.
the links. I'm also on social media. I'm Instagram, Facebook. I'm just new to TikTok. I'm not sure if that's where I want to head, but anyway. But I'm pretty contactable. I have 2 websites and also a podcast called Sensibility, CENTS Ability. So where we talk a lot about money and mindset coaching, and I'm just starting to get guests on that actually have been through my program. So yeah, I'm very contactable. You should be able to find me anywhere on those platforms.
Thanks, Amie. And
No worries.
you wouldn't be a guest of ours if you didn't actually cop this last question. What your spirit animal is, and why, and a squirrel makes some sense in terms of being able to just like save, but I think a squirrel sounds like they're going to hoard as well, and I'm not sure if that's the right one either. So what would you call yourself?
Well, funny enough, I hadn't really thought about this for a very long time. But my mother used to call me Butterfly when I was a little girl.
Yeah.
And then I looked into that, and I found on Facebook one of those questionnaires about what's your spirit animal, and I did a little bit of a questionnaire, and it was butterfly. And I thought about it and went, yeah, okay, because when, we all go through this process, and it's like the chrysalis process and then the rebirth and the butterfly appears. And I thought of maybe I've got multiple lives as a butterfly, perhaps, but the whole idea of I do flutter about, I'm always busy. I'm always filling my mind with stuff. And so if you watch a butterfly floating about, that's sort of what you'd expect in my head, if that makes sense, with my brain, the way I work.
I think it's probably as good a response as I've had. It's a challenging question to answer, so appreciate you coming on. I think everyone's got a lot of value out of this one, and I'm looking forward to dropping it as soon as possible. Thanks for coming.
Fantastic, thank you.
I hope that this one was enjoyable to listen to, and there were some moments of value. If you have resonated in any way with the sentiments of this podcast, we would be delighted to direct you to our website, www.itsneveraboutmoney.com.au, for more free resources and education aimed at improving your capacity to make sound financial decisions for the benefit of your family. We wish you every success, however you define it.